Welcome to the Washington Reporter podcast. It's great to be back. I'm your host, Jacob Wool, coming to you from Irvine, California, and Ernie Veritimos is here, as always, from Boston, Massachusetts. Ernie, how's it going?
Well, it turns out yesterday on July 4th, I was a MAGA hero.
Well, tell me about this. What was your 4th of July?
Well, it wasn't just 4th of July. What I'm noticing is that I try to wear my hat out as much as possible. My wife is a little squeamish about me wearing it out. She's always afraid that there's going to be some kind of incident, And so last weekend we had a dog show. As you know, we have Ridgebacks, and one of our dogs we show. And I wore my hat. And now consider, maybe it's the type of people, whatever, it's held in a relatively rural community, got thumbs up and love your hat, blah, blah, blah. And then yesterday when I was down in Westport, Mass, which is, if you want to talk hoity-toity, went down to our friend's house who have a place right on the beach. And again, just big thumbs up. Everyone loves the hat.
Oh, yeah. I get.
Wait. We're living in Massachusetts, mind you.
The same thing. You'd be surprised, folks. And of course, the leftists have no idea. They won't say anything. They won't come up to you. They're fearful. They're afraid. They're cloistered up, and they're not going to say anything to you. But you will get a lot of thumbs up if you wear the hats, particularly as you're wearing now. The red Make America Great Again hat is the one to wear. Although I found the red USA hat triggers them as well. They don't like those three letters, USA.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that leftists are afraid to confront you, because it depends on where they are, where they feel they may be safe from, or safe from any kind of confrontation. So if they're in the city, for instance, I think they're a little bit more brazen. And you may have seen that video that was on earlier on Twitter, and it's making its rounds of this guy in a Whataburger shop, I think it was.
Right.
And he stole the kid's hat and then doused it, and then he poured the drink all over him. And of course, the guy, they found out who he was, and then they fired his ass from working at that Whataburger.
Yeah, that's a video that's definitely making its rounds right now. 4th of July was not uneventful. We had a leftist climb the Statue of Liberty to open up,
closed it down so other people couldn't go there.
Yeah, that was the news yesterday. They were climbing the Statue of Liberty. That was a big spectacle. Frankly, I think the media probably should have ignored it, because they really played into what these attention-hungry, open borders leftists want. We've got a lot to talk about today, lots and lots of news to cover. So we're going to do our best here in the hour or so that we have. Germany has just removed their tariffs on U.S. cars, or reduced them greatly. Merkel has finally caved, and so Trump will not be forced to ban the import of BMW and Mercedes, as he had threatened to do. Also, we've got Scott Pruitt. He's just tendered his resignation. The EPA administrator, long been under attack by the left and their lackeys in the media, because he's been so effective at EPA.
Well, oh, yeah, but he brought it upon himself. Come on.
He brought it upon himself. He's been very effective as an EPA administrator, but he has time and time again, really shot himself in the foot, I guess is what we can say.
He just took liberties. That's what it comes down to. And, when you're in the public trust, don't take the liberties. Be humble. Do your job. Don't order $1,200 pen sets and take first-class trips, everywhere you go. Or have security details that cost $1 million. It's just,
Right. These are what the Democrats are supposed to be left to do.
Well, yeah, you expect it from them.
Right. You expect this from the Democrats. I mean, you expect the Democrats to rob their own charities to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars, but you don't expect it from Republicans. So after a long assault, and they came back at him with a new wave of accusations over the weekend, he has finally stepped down. His deputy is going to be taking over. But those are just two stories that are coming across the wire as we speak.
And I just want to make clear, too, I agree with you that he did a good job, and he was effective at what he did. But, man, just go all the way. If you're going to do a good job, do it right.
Right. I agree. Couldn't agree more. Well, I was watching CNN this morning, and they had somebody on named Sophia Gregg. She's an attorney from the Immigrant Advocacy Program, the IAP. This is a program backed by our good friend George Simmons. I keep forgetting.
Geez, you keep on. I know it's so hard to remember.
Greg Simons. George Soros. Right. It's a group backed by George Soros. And she was on CNN this morning.
You know what I hate about that name is that it sounds kind of Greek, doesn't it?
It does. It sounds a little bit Greek.
Yeah, that bothers me because I'm Greek.
Oh, well, it does. It sounds a little Greek, Hungarian, of course. I think it technically is, but maybe there's some Greeks in there somewhere. They are launching a new push. These immigrant advocates like Michael Avenatti, who, by the way, now says he's going to run for president against Trump. The foreign lawyer is going to run for president against Donald J. Trump. These immigrant advocates are now pushing to stop a great evil that's taking place on our southern border. No, not child separations. What they're trying to stop now is family reunifications. That's what they're trying to stop. And what specifically are they trying to do? They're trying to prevent DNA tests to confirm that the children belong to whoever they say is their parents or guardians. You know, Uncle Tio, let's make sure he's really an uncle. You know, let's make sure that mom is really mom and dad is really dad. They want to stop this. It's a great injustice.
Well, you know what I don't know or haven't found out is this coming from the parents or is this coming from this group?
Well,
I mean, are the parents complaining at all? I mean, because if I were a parent, I mean, damn, hell yeah, man. I want you to DNA swab so I can find my kid.
Right. It takes 5 moments. It's not a big deal. They are describing this as an unprecedented breach of medical privacy and civil rights. Of course, court-ordered DNA tests are commonplace. They happen every single day in this country, whether it be to prove paternity, whether it be to solve crimes, to prove guilt or innocence. DNA tests ordered by courts happen all the time. This is.
Well, they claim that the children can't give consent, so they're not old enough or they're not, of legal age to be in their right mind to say, yeah. I'll give up that right.
And liberals are big on children not being exploited without their consent.
Of course.
Listen, the last thing liberals want is your child to be able to consent to a vaccine in school. They certainly don't want your 12-year-old or 14-year-old to be able to go out and get an abortion without your permission. And more than anything else, they really don't want your kids to be able to be marched into an anti-gun march by their teachers without your permission. Liberals are really big on children not being exploited, right?
Well, thinking about this, I would think that the liberal mindset, they would probably go right to the, in back of regular parents in school and swab everybody's cheek to see if they can get a DNA sample, because then they get that record, for later use. That seems like a very liberal thing to do.
Oh yeah. I mean, when it comes to forcing vaccines, when it comes to forcing children to participate in anti-gun marches, when it comes to forcing children to participate in ultra-liberal sex ed in kindergarten, they're all about that. But they don't want the kids to be DNA tested to get back to their parents. Their contention is, well, these kids are verbal. They can tell us who their parent is, and we have absolutely no concern that the kids are under any sort of duress and are going to be forced to say anything. We just want it to be on everybody's word. Just do the honor system and hand out kids at will. That's what they want. That's what they're calling for. And this is their next major push on the border. And of course, we know what this is all about. We know that this is, the push to prevent this. They say there's no time. We can't do this. Well, yeah, you can. It takes 5 minutes. And their problem is if all of these kids are DNA tested, they know that far more of these children than we had ever imagined are going to turn out to not be with their parents. These are going to turn out to be traffickers, coyotes, you name it. And that's the big problem. They don't want Trump to be proven right on this, on the issue of who these kids belong to. That's what this is.
Well, and I think it's a little bit more devious than that. What it really means is that every time that they find out one of these people, whether they're a criminal or don't belong to the kids or any other thing that would prevent them from coming into the country, means another potential vote slashed.
Right. And it's a long-term thing. Democrats have realized that they have already lost the war of ideas. There's a new poll out that shows that white men in the last year alone have moved 16 points towards Trump. They're coming to the Republican Party. They're coming to Trump. They want to see Republicans elected in the midterms. And so they're panicked. They know they've lost the war of ideas. Now it's just a demographic question for them. They know that if they can import enough people and have what they feel are going to be generations of welfare dependent Democrat voters, then that is a win for them. And of course, on the other side of that, in contention to that, is border security and law and order. And that's what they are so desperately working to take apart and to demonize and to get rid of and do away with.
Yeah, this whole thing is really making me sick because it has nothing to do with the children. The Dems don't give a damn about the children, because if they did, they would have done something about it under Obama. And who was it back then? Johnson. I mean, he's admitted as much, that they used to incarcerate them as a form, with the family, and put everybody together as a form of deterrence. So why wasn't the press, up in arms about them incarcerating them and keeping families incarcerated for long periods of time under Obama? But now it's a big deal.
Well, of course,
it has nothing to do with the kids. Nothing.
And we've read the Washington Post report from 2014, where in 2014 alone, 90,000 kids were handed over by the Obama administration to human traffickers, never to be found again. They just don't know where they are. They're gone. They're in sex slavery somewhere, or being forced to work on a chicken farm is where they found a couple dozen of them out of the 90,000. But we're going to keep following this. We just wanted to make you aware of this latest push to stop the DNA tests and not, at first they wanted the kids reunited. Now they're saying, let's reunite them. Let's do the DNA test. And leftists are saying, no, we can't allow that. It violates privacy. So we've got a hate speech document going around Facebook, and the heroes at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg and team and the gang over at Facebook, they are working their hardest to keep this document from gracing your unhealed eyes. This document is very salacious. It's racist, in fact, and they're going to keep it away from you. The document that we're talking about, of course, is the Declaration of Independence. Yes, Facebook has decided that the founding document of this country, especially on a day devoted to atheism and destroying the country, the 4th of July, needs to be hidden, suppressed, and censored off of their social network. Since June 24th, the Liberty County Vindicator has been posting sections of the Declaration of Independence, and they had posted 9, and there had been no incident whatsoever. But for part 10, the post was deleted, and they reposted it. It was deleted again, and then it was suppressed. And when people tried to share it, it wouldn't let them. And they received a notice from Facebook, the Vindicator did, saying that the post goes against their standards on hate speech. Of course, the post contained in paragraph 27 through 31 of the Declaration of Independence. The grievance, they believe, although Facebook won't say, has to do with a particular line in paragraph 31 where it says, domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring the inhabitants of our frontier, the merciless Indian savages. They believe that's the problem and what Facebook has a problem with. But folks, it's the Declaration of Independence. You can disagree with the terminology, but it's our founding document. It is the original document that started up everything else. Facebook.
Well, these were what they called, I believe, the grievances clauses.
Right. That's correct.
Part of our history.
And it's just curious to me that it talks about domestic insurrections. We've got a lot of domestic insurrections going on at the moment. We've got 17 angry Democrats running around with reckless abandon, spending money and trying to remove the president from office. You've got Antifa taking to the streets and beating people down with clubs. You've got people pouring across our border and strip mining our welfare system. And you've got Democrats draining our country dry of resources and attempting to destroy and trample on the Constitution. So it's interesting to me that the clause that starts with the word domestic insurrections is the one that gets the kibosh from Facebook. Facebook has refused to allow the post to be posted, and they've even in some cases now been caught removing the Declaration of Independence in whole from their website. They don't like the Declaration of Independence. They don't like 1776. And they don't like America, folks. That's what this all comes down to. I wish that we could sugarcoat it. I wish that we could be more nice about this, Ernie. It really would be nice if we could just debate the ideas and we could rely on leftists to be debating on good faith and that they actually wanted the country to remain with its underlying underpinnings and fundamentals. But
Well,
they
they
don't.
have these crocodile tears for different causes and groups of people. Of course, it's all about identity politics. And if you're talking about the American Indians or the Indian savages, as a group, they want us to all think that back then we should, think of them as this sort of benevolent civilization back then. But when in fact they were savages, they were tribal, they were fighting against each other. It didn't have anything to do. And look, there's no doubt that we went over there and caused mayhem and brought smallpox and all other kinds of things that wiped them out. But in general, when they first got over there, the Indians were ruthless, not just to the Pilgrims, but and to the Brits and everybody else that came over, but to themselves and to other Indian nations. They were ruthless.
Oh, absolutely ruthless. And what is, of course, taught in public school.
Not all of them. Not all of them. There were different nations that some of them were quite friendly. But
well, Elizabeth Warren is really the authority on this. And
yes, Pocahontas.
Pocahontas she is really the authority. Of course, she's got a long lineage of American so we should refer to her on this. So she, so this continues, and the censorship continues, and they continue to try to stop conservatives and censor conservatives. We don't even bother with Facebook.
What you should do? You know what I was thinking? Why don't we just start putting out Twitter posts of like the Federalist Papers? And we'll choose different paragraphs that we think might be salacious, just to to trigger them.
We should, and we should remind people that
experiment.
That the nation's founding was maybe more towards the alt-right than they ever would have believed. I mean, listen, that you would have thought this was written by, Richard Spencer, according to Facebook, but it was written by, the founders of our country. So it's being censored, it's being removed, and Facebook and the thought police at Facebook will keep you safe. So don't worry, don't fret, don't lose sleep. It's all good.
Facebook. Our founding fathers would have been called free speech extremists.
Free speech extremists. They would have been called Milo Yiannopoulos followers. They would have been called God knows what, enemies of the free press, perhaps even. So I want to talk about this latest Novichok scare, this Russian nerve agent supposedly used in London, and get into that. But before we do, there's a new headline out, and this was on Drudge Report this morning. A lot of you may have seen it. Mueller taps more prosecutors to help with growing Trump probe. Special counsel Robert Mueller is tapping additional Justice Department resources to help with new legal battles as his year-old investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 election continues to expand.
Year-old?
Year-old. Yeah, we've been going for a lot.
It's got to be coming up on 2 years now.
Yeah, I mean, it's Mueller alone has been going for 14 months. So as Mueller pursues his probe, Bloomberg writes, he's making more use of career prosecutors from the offices of U.S. attorneys and from Justice Department headquarters, as well as FBI agents, a sign that he may be laying the groundwork to hand off parts of his investigation eventually, several current and former U.S. officials said. By the way, who is a current and former U.S. official? I mean, that could be the head of the Department of Agriculture. It could be the Surgeon General. It could be the postmaster. I mean, what? This is so vague. Who knows who a current and former U.S. official is? What does that even mean?
Well, they have to leave it open, so keep people guessing, I guess.
Right. They don't name these people at all, ever.
They're like, unnamed sources.
Right. And most of the time, of course, these people are entirely made up. It's a figment of their imagination all too often. By the way, it's interesting that this all comes up and that they're pushing this line, Mueller ramping up. You see, there's a pattern. Mueller takes a big defeat, They run a bunch of headlines saying Mueller's ramping up and about to take down Trump. That is the pattern. That is the pattern. Because just yesterday, what happened? The DNC lawsuit, which alleged all kinds of collusion, it cited every conspiracy theory imaginable about Trump and Russians, and it sued Paul Manafort. They sued Ivanka. They sued Don Jr. They sued Jared Kushner. They sued everybody in town. And they claimed that they colluded with the Russians to cheat them out of the election. They stole the election. Yesterday, that lawsuit was thrown out by a federal judge. Thrown out. It's done for. They said it's nonsense, it's flimsy, it's BS, frivolous, gone. Is CNN talking about that? No. They're talking about this Bloomberg report that Mueller's ramping up. In fact, so far, he has spent $7 million just diverted to DOJ to pay other expenses that the DOJ is running up alongside his investigation. We also know, vis-a-vis New York Times reporting by Steinberg, I forget his name, I believe it was Steinberg in the New York Times, vis-a-vis the New York Times own reporting, we know that the CIA was running around Europe and spending all kinds of money too. In fact, they spent $100,000 in a hotel in Vienna to buy a fake Trump sex tape from a Russian scam artist who took their money and gave them poorly photoshopped photos of an overweight man having sex with prostitutes with Trump's face edited onto it. That's in the New York Times. It's been reported months ago. Okay. So you've got the CIA running around, running a coup. You've got the FBI doing their thing. You've got Mueller marching on and diverting money every which way to the tune of millions of dollars. It's now over 22 million in total.
Oh, wait a minute. But, he's adding how many new prosecutors? Another 8 or something like that?
Yeah, another 8 prosecutors. And
they go at what, about a 150 to 180 a pop?
Yeah, 180, 200 at the highest if they're GS, what is it, GS1? Yeah. So they're paying them all sorts of money, but you still don't get to 22 million. That's the big mystery here is where is all this money going?
Travel expenses. Same thing Pruitt was bagged for.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they're chartering first-class yachts, though. I don't know. I mean,
well, you said you had suggested a submarine. That was going a little over the top. Maybe some Lambos.
Some Lambos, some jet skis. They need maybe a chopper or two. I mean, this stuff isn't cheap. There's spies here. They got to remove the president. So they're still paying, by the way, I've got this from inside sources. They're still paying Stefan Halper. What he's still doing, God only knows. They're still paying him after they already paid him $400,000 as of late summer last year. Now they're hiding it through LLCs and things too, so you can't look it up in the database. They learned their lesson after I exposed them the first time. So DNC lawsuit dismissed. They have to come out with a new headline. And this Bloomberg stuff has been consistently empty. Last week they ran a story saying, new signs that Mueller is ramping up investigation of collusion allegations. And they recycled a bunch of old headlines that never really panned out anyway and just smashed them into an article and called it news. Like that.
Well, that's Bloomberg's modus operandi and virtually everything. And especially with economic news, they'll come out in the morning and say, oh, oil is up because of such and such. And then later that day, they'll say, well, oil is down because of such and such. And the such and such will be the same such and such. So they just put out content. That's all that they're interested in. Just put out content.
Just clicks. Yeah, that's all it is clicks. Plain and simple. Well, Ernie, we've got a new Novichok scare.
Ooh.
Russians. Again, here's a backgrounder clip from NBC to get us up to speed. One moment here. There we go.
All right. British police say 2 more people were poisoned by the same substance used to attack a former Soviet spy and his daughter. The newest victims were found in Amesbury, England, just a few miles from the scene of that alleged assassination attempt in March. Charlie D'Agata is at the hospital in Salisbury, where they're being treated. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning. We're told that the victims being treated here at the hospital remain in critical condition. Earlier today, the health minister said it appears to be an unfortunate after effect of the initial poisoning. Paramedics in hazmat suits stretchered away the latest victim of a military-grade nerve agent on Saturday. British media have identified the pair as Charlie Rowley and Dawn Sturgis. Last night came the dreaded news from Scotland Yard.
Following the detailed analysis of those samples, we can confirm that the man and woman have been exposed to the nerve agent Novichok,
the same kind of nerve agent used in the attack on Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia that Britain blamed squarely on Russia. An assassination attempt that took place just a few miles from where the couple collapsed. Sam Hobson was with Rowley when he became violently ill.
He was rocking against the wall and like his eyes were all red, pinpricked, and he started sweating loads and dribbling.
British security officials said today they're working on the assumption the pair was not specifically targeted. This police tape surrounds the entire perimeter of this park. It's thought the couple had visited here recently, and it's walking distance from where the Skripals collapsed last March.
Well, this sounds. Oh, wait a minute. This is getting more and more suspicious by the minute because, first of all, isn't this Novichok stuff? Isn't it like from like Cold War era or something? I mean, it's like a really old something that you would find in an apothecary in the back room on a shelf that no one's seen before, covered with cobwebs.
Well, I dug in deep here and I found out a couple of things that are going to really, really raise some question about this story. I'll get to them in one moment. There's a little bit left of this clip and you're going to hear some more tidbits that I think are going to be useful.
Stumbled across a potentially lethal amount of the nerve agent used in that initial attack. Novichok can remain deadly for long periods, according to chemical weapons expert Hamish de Bretton-Gordon.
But most nerve agents are not very persistent and last for days, possibly weeks. We understand that Novichoks were designed to last for months. So
note how he said Novichoks plural. I'll get to that in a second.
Months down the line, it's obviously still toxic.
And that presents a new and urgent challenge for counterterrorism police here. Still, health officials here insist that the risk to the general public remains low. They're advising people not to pick up anything they're not sure of.
Don't go to that park.
Fortunately for the couple, they're at a hospital with medical officials. They're now familiar with how to treat Novichok attacks, so that is good for them. And
now this is all very suspicious. I mean, look, this isn't a conspiracy theory show. We don't really, look for conspiracy theories where ones are not obvious.
Well, I know what the conspiracy is. You don't go to that park walking through the park with your daughter.
Well, I mean, so there's a couple things.
I'm sorry.
First of all, Novichok isn't a chemical agent. Novichok is a class of chemical agents. There are many different things that fit within that class of chemical agents. With the first group, they said that they touched it on a doorknob, and then they said no, it went through the car's system, through the car's air conditioner, and it was gas, and it got into the air and affected Yulia and Sergei Skripal, the Russian defectors. So that's how they said they got it, okay? They weren't sprayed in the park. They didn't get it from the doorknob. They got it from the air conditioner in the car. That's what the official line is from Britain. So my question is, first of all, how do these people just happen to stumble across it 3 months later in the park? I mean, really? Did they leave the spare container of it on the ground and they picked it up and drank it? I mean, this is really just from a choreography standpoint doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's really strange.
Okay.
How do they get exposed to this in the park 3 months later? I don't know. It's bizarre. And the other thing is they're so sure that it is this Novichok. But again, as the chemical weapons expert said, Novichoks plural, it's not that this is one thing. Novichok describes an entire range of military chemical weapons. The last part of this is I don't think that these people were randomly targeted, and I don't think that Russia has great incentive to do this, especially ahead of their summit with Trump. Isn't it interesting that Trump announces his summit with Putin and he says, I'm going to go over there. We're going to talk about the Crimea. We're going to talk about Ukraine. We're going to talk about how to get gas prices down and produce more oil. Really productive kind of stuff that Trump wants to get to with Vladimir Putin. And just as that trip is announced, and just as an envoy heads over there, the Office of Presidential Advance, they're in charge of setting up the meetings and the logistics and which hotel is going to be used and which vehicles are going to be used. Just as those guys get boots on the ground, yesterday or the day before yesterday, you get this. You get this headline that comes out, this story, weird witnesses, and it's just really, I mean, what would be Russia's incentive to do something like this?
Well, it's not only that, it just take this from a common sense point of view, and maybe most people don't even think this way, but if you're going to talk counter espionage, and let's say you're a country and you want to commit something, you want to exterminate somebody or whatever, you don't use something that's going to tie it directly back to you. You use something that will tie it to somebody else. It's just like, the hacking of DNC servers. They say that they're sure it was Russians because they were Russian bots, and it was done with a certain code base and used on a Russian keyboard. I'm like, a Russian agent would never do that. They're not going to expose themselves in this counter espionage.
Oh, no, the last thing you would do.
Put like big signs that say, "Hey, it's the Russians! It's the Russians!"
Especially because for $10, for $10 you can buy a VPN that will change your IP address. So if you're in Russia, you can make it look like you're in Bahrain, or if you're in Bahrain, you can make it look like you're in China. You can change your IP address. So the idea that you would ever use a Russian nerve agent if you're a Russian agent, or you'd use a Russian IP address if you're a Russian hacker, is patently ridiculous.
But are these nerve agents, are they even current? I thought that these were like I said, old Cold War things. These are not things that are state of the art now.
That's the other part of this. These are not state-of-the-art nerve agents anymore. These were, basically tested and discovered in the late 80s. They are designed to be used as aerosols and bombs to get large areas. Anyway, they're not very good in low doses for specific locations because they linger and everything else. I mean, there's just things that are quite weird. I mean, how did they know that these people had ingested Novichok and they were known to send an ambulance where everybody in the ambulance is wearing hazmat suits? Again, these are things that just don't add up here with this story. And we're not conspiracy theorists, but it just seems like interesting timing. Trump announces Putin summit, leftists go crazy. This headline hits hours later. I mean, it's a little bit suspicious.
Yeah,
it's a little bit suspicious. How could you meet with Putin when he's attacking our closest ally with nerve gas? I mean, it's just, come on, folks. We've seen this movie before. We've seen this movie before. And I'm the last person to suggest conspiracy theories without basis. Don't misunderstand me. But this is a conspiracy theory with lots of basis. Now, they are banging the war drums, with Russia. They want relations with Russia to go down the tubes. And there's a new report, as if this stuff wasn't enough, that Trump discussed war with Venezuela. Have you heard this one, Ernie?
No, I haven't.
This morning. They're saying that current and former White House officials confirmed that last summer, President Trump...
The former, right?
Yeah. Asked about invading Venezuela to remove Maduro and help the people. Now, you got to hear this report. You will not believe what this MSNBC anchor said just this morning about this report. You won't believe what she's got to say.
We've got this new reporting this morning. It indicates the president was willing to go to war last summer to solve a foreign policy challenge, but not in Russia, in Venezuela.
Wait a second. But not in Russia, where he obviously should have gone to war. What is she talking about? Nobody asked. Nobody thought, oh, Russia. No, only the leftists. Only if you're a deranged sicko leftist could you have thought, oh, Russia? Yeah, we should go to war.
And this was confirmed with what? More unnamed sources?
Yes, more unnamed sources. She continues.
According to the Associated Press, the president repeatedly brought up the idea of invading Venezuela as a way to get rid of its president and provide some stability to that troubled country. The report says when President Trump first brought up the idea in August, top officials seemed to talk him out of it, but then the president revisited it publicly the next day. Listen.
Venezuela is a mess. It's a very dangerous mess and a very sad situation. The people are suffering and they're dying. We have many options for Venezuela, including a possible military option if necessary.
But of course, this is what Trump always does. He always prepares all the options. This is par for the course when it comes to Syria, when it comes to North Korea, when it comes to Venezuela. It doesn't matter He's always got the full range, whether it be trade, diplomatic, covert, military. He's always got all of his options. This is nothing unusual. But they run this story now, again, to try to push the narrative. It's just the rotation. Once you understand the rotation, this all makes sense. You go from Trump's a racist, Nazi, to Trump is unhinged, crazy man, gonna get us all killed. World War III, and that's what they're on now with the Venezuela and the Russia. It's World War III. It's on our horizon here.
Well, and of course, this all, to me, this just tells us what socialism actually brings us. I mean, this is the perfect example why Tom Perez is an absolute idiot, ice hole. That's kind of a pun, by the way. That he's now saying that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's the future. So socialism is the future of the Democratic Party. And this is what they want. They want the United States to be Venezuela.
Right. And it's interesting because Obama would try very hard to temper his socialist leanings, to temper his communist background, his Bill Ayers communist background. And he would never admit that he was indeed a socialist. Never admit that. He's now said, okay, I'm out of the White House. I'm running things from behind the scenes. I've got Valerie Jarrett living in the guest bedroom. I'm just going to go for it. And so now the Democrats are just going for it. They're just admitting that they're socialists. Hell, this may even be related to the way Trump has brought a lot of candor into the political realm and a lot of honesty into the political realm and just says it like it is. Maybe they just figure, hey, Trump says it like it is. We'll say it like it is. We're just communists at the end of the day. Let's just admit it already instead of hiding behind it. So,
no, they're coming right out and saying it. I mean, Tom Perez has already said it, that he's a devout socialist. And now he's endorsing Cortez as the future of the Democratic Party. I'm sorry, the Democratic Socialist Party, which is just a euphemism for communism.
Right. The Democrat Socialist Party. They were going to go for National Socialists, but that one, when you Google it, pops up Nazi. So they can't do that. Of course.
Well, also keep in mind that there is no difference, in fact, between communism and socialism. If one has economic freedoms suppressed and the other has political freedoms suppressed, if you're suppressed, you're suppressed. If you can't choose what to buy or where to go, you're under the same system, the same oppressive system. Communism and socialism are exactly the same.
They are precisely the same. And she has gone so far as to say that every American will work for the federal government. She wants to go in and raid the banks and socialize them. She wants to go in and raid the farms and make them government owned. She wants
and the head of the DNC is for this. This is what he wants.
And they want to ship you off to go work at a steel mill in Magnitogorsk. Pittsburgh.
They'll use violence to get their way.
This is Stalin 101. This is Joseph Stalin 101 here that we're watching.
More people have died under socialism and communism and tyrannical regimes than any other means on the face of the planet, including all the major plagues and flu epidemics and everything else. It's because of this type of tyrannical oppressive system, and they want to bring it to the United States.
And this is why I always find it interesting when people, when really niche conspiracy theories and doom and gloom stuff is so popular online. Maybe a meteor is going to hit. Maybe the vaccines are bad for you. Maybe all this stuff. But at the end of the day, we've got the deadly black death called communism, and it's right here on our doorstep, and they're admitting it. You don't need to venture into the land of buffoonery to find the gravest threat we could ever imagine, which is communism in America. And we've got that right in front of us. They're admitting it. They're open about it. They're saying it. It's all very clear. They want to convert this to a Western European style socialist government. They then want to import tens of millions of Central to Sub-Saharan African to Middle Eastern migrants into the country and collapse the whole thing and go in and pillage whatever's left afterwards. This is an admitted plan. The Atlantic Council, the Council on Foreign Relations, you name it. It's all been written out already. You don't have to guess about this or speculate. It's all out there. And if you want to see what it looks like, if you want to see what these people's program looks like, it's a very formulaic program. Just look at Europe. Western Europe is about 5 years ahead of us on the curve, and we're about 5 years behind them. And if you want to know what it looks like, just travel over there, look around, and that's what you're going to get. They're just a little bit ahead of us on the progressive spectrum, but that's what the Democrats want here. It's admitted. Open borders, George Soros running the show, total economic tyranny. That's what these people are calling for.
Absolutely.
Well, it's coming apart slowly but surely because we do have a road warrior in the White House, the likes of which no one's ever seen before. And last week or earlier this week, Trump rolled back affirmative action. It took further steps to roll it back vis-a-vis the DOJ. And this all happens as Harvard is being subpoenaed by the feds over their admissions process, which the feds believe, and they're investigating this, could be racist. That's right. They give certain races preference over others, kind of like Jim Crow laws, another confabulation of the Democrats. This is all happening right before our eyes. Trump is rolling back this program. Leftists are going crazy. And Harvard's under fire. They're trying desperately to keep their admissions process secret. And this is something that's taking place here slowly but surely. I'm curious where this goes. Of course, there's been lots of things to halt affirmative action in the past, Ernie. I mean, California still technically has affirmative action banned by state law. They do it anyway, through all of the universities, but it's banned. So the big question will be, I guess, what happens here as this thing battles out in the courts and goes back and forth? And do you think there's any saving the colleges? I don't think there is. I think they're beyond salvaging.
Well, it's only going to be effective on those colleges that take public money. And does Harvard? Why would Harvard be worried about this? I mean, don't they have their endowment and they just basically pay for everybody's education anyways?
Well, the thing with Harvard is that the feds are alleging that their admissions process is just patently racist and violates,
of course it is,
civil rights laws. But of course it is. It's well known that if you're Hispanic or you're Mexican or you're Middle Eastern, you are given a boost. And if you're East Asian or Ashkenazi Jew or white, you're given a little bit of a deficit. And that's what they think is leveling out the playing field. I think that's inherently racist. I mean, I don't know how you look at that and say that that's a program worthy of keeping. But the colleges are fighting tooth and nail. My big thing with the colleges, Ernie, and this has been my contention for a long time, is that conservatives bitch and moan about the colleges. They complain that they're so liberal and they just hate it. And it's fascist and there's no free speech and there's all these problems. But then what do? At the end of the year or the beginning of the year, they cut a big check, a big five-figure check, and they hand it over to the colleges. If you're really serious about protesting the colleges, stop giving them your damn money. I mean, this is the biggest hypocrisy on earth, and it's being carried out by conservatives. We're going to complain about colleges. We're going to say they're racist. We're going to say they don't let conservatives speak. We're going to say all this stuff, but we're not going to pull our money because we're too afraid to go out there and make an economic, get our economic cut for ourselves without the crutch of, a college brand to say we're smart. We can't hold up our own IQ and our own test scores and hustle our way into a job. We have to go to these colleges, even though they suppress us and abuse us, and then pretend and feign outrage.
I don't really care what Harvard does, to tell you the truth. I really don't care. They can be as racist as they want. It's their money. It's a private university. But when it comes to public universities, or like that thing that happened earlier in June with de Blasio and those selective high schools, those specialized high school admissions where they were trying to create some diversity or whatever, and you have to take this, I think, accreditation or a test, and so it really went by merit, right, based on your ability to get into these schools, and what happened, and they were trying to limit it to certain minorities. Well, what happened was all the Indians and the Asians were like scoring way higher than everybody else, and they were like completely taking over all the admissions. And now De Blasio says, "Oh, wait, we can't do that. We need diversity, so we can't use a test anymore." And so now all these Asians and Indians are all up, and I'm saying, look, we earned our way into this. I mean, they're great schools, by the way. They're like charter schools. So this is what happens when you become so into your identity politics and this diversity thing, and make that rule over everything else. It ends up eating itself. You cannot force these solutions down people's throats, because no matter what good intentions you have, your good intentions are going to cause more problems than they fix.
Well, that's exactly right. And, there is nobody that's hurt more by affirmative action than, as you mentioned, East Asians and Indians on average. On average, they have very high IQ. They do very well in math. Math is the first language in Asia. Just culturally, it's a different thing. They do very well on these tests, and they get hurt. And the net beneficiaries of this are Black folks on average and Hispanic folks. And by the way, many of these people don't want any of this. I
think it ultimately hurts even the Black and the Spanish folks, even if they were given those opportunities, because now they basically skate through these programs. They basically push them along and give them degrees. I'm not saying that not all of them, don't earn their degrees, but they make it easy, and they're not preparing them for real life.
Want it. The smart ones actually don't want it. They say, "Hey, I don't want a leg up. I don't want a crutch. Just give me the same test as everyone else." And then some of them, as you mentioned, skate through the programs. But then there's no faking it, and in certain industries, there's no faking it. So they might be able to make it through med school, but they can't fake it in residency. Or they might be able to make it through law school, these folks that are helped by these programs, but then when they take the bar exam, they can't pass it. And so there's nothing more cruel than setting somebody up with a ton of debt because they meet your kind of contorted standards that are sort of curve fitted to them because you have reduced the standards for certain groups of people based on the color of their skin. And so you push them through this whole program. You tell them you're going to be a fantastic lawyer. And then they only find out in the real world that actually, no, they're not going to make a fantastic lawyer. They don't have nearly the mental horsepower needed to do that. And
well, it's the same thing even on, from where this all started, when you had people of privilege and then they got into these schools because of their parents' social status or economic status or whatever, and they certainly weren't qualified to get in. They got in because daddy bought a new wing at the college or something. It's exactly the same thing. It's obviously it's a different class, but it was exactly the same thing there too. Just make it all meritocracy based. Right. Let people perform, and the people that perform, let them move on.
Yeah, exactly. But that doesn't fit their egalitarian needs. It doesn't fit equality. Doesn't create enough equality for them, so they're not going to do that. But anyway, Ernie, what are you watching over the weekend here as we wrap up the show and prepare for next Monday's podcast?
Oh boy, after 4th of July holiday and spending some time at the beach, I bet you it was warmer where we are than it is where you are. Believe it or not, we've been regularly in the mid to upper 90s.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, more beach time.
Yeah.
and just like try to push all this news away a little bit. Of course, I'll always be prepared for the show.
Right. No, it's good. You have to take a hiatus from the fake news, from the never ending, just rush of fake news that's coming in.
Well, I'll tell you the one thing that is starting to become a very stark contrast. You've noticed how well the United States is doing right now from an economic point of view. We're really cooking. And then the rest of the world is still on this real downward move. Europe is suffering. China's moving down. I mean, the rest of the world is hurting, and we're like the shining star right now.
Yeah, it is fascinating to see. We're by far growing at a faster rate than any other major economy. I mean, there's some little growth spots because of mining and things in Mongolia and little places like that. But when you talk about major economies, nobody's even close. Nobody.
Yeah, and so I think that that's going to have a big effect from an influence point of view on Trump's side. You know, I mean, if a lot of these other countries now are hurting, they're going to be looking at us as a way to kind of lift, you know, hopefully, I think they're thinking that the United States and, you know, when the tide rises, all boats rise. But the United States tide is rising. The other boats aren't rising. They're sinking. So I think that gives us it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. I think he has some greater political capital because of that.
Yeah, and you know what? I expect the markets to, you know, sizzle down here a little bit into the summer and maybe enter into a lull for a couple of months and then pick up around late summer. That's just kind of what I'm seeing in the tape recently. So that should provide a nice backdrop for Trump to do what he wants, foreign policy wise, if there's not a lot of daily volatility in the markets. But wow, look at that! Already been 50 minutes. Everybody, thanks for watching, of course, and make sure to subscribe if you're watching live on YouTube or rewatching on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe on iTunes, and if you could, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Helps us move up the algorithm and break through the censorship. Follow Ernie at Trader of Futures on Twitter, traderfutures.com. Same thing on YouTube, and of course, you can support the podcast, get the show notes, and everything else at thewashingtonreporter.com. It's been fantastic to have all of you, and we'll be back on Monday.